Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans. From a diehard Houston sports fan, I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Astros fan podcaster. I'll try to add some more qualifiers in there soon to make that an accurate statement. Who am I? I'm an actor, improviser, writer, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, and most importantly, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. You know, actually, my fantasy football league, the only one that I do nowadays, is named the Thunder Bears, after the Houston Thunder Bears arena football team. I know every single Houston sports team that has ever been in existence, at least since I've been in existence, folks. I've spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer here in Los Angeles, and now, well, I'm podcasting. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You start absent-mindedly calling it the 10 instead of I-10. And you start podcasting. Welcome to said podcast. Space Cadet Sports started as a passion project because most media is infuriating as a diehard long-term fan of the Houston Astros and your other Houston sports team. Here, we aren't doom and gloom casual fans, or worse, the national media haters and avoiders. We love our teams and root them on, but also try to discuss the ins and outs of them without too much homerism. The key word here, of course, is try. I'd like to welcome returning listeners and welcome new listeners to what my brothers call the Paul Broad Pod Ball Blog. Hey, brothers. Shout out to my brothers. Shout out to Arrested Development fans. If you are new here, welcome. You can go and check out spacecadetsports.substack.com, our home, for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience depending on your interpretation of my mumbling here. We are recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-producer, the Ross to my Frasier. Carla, the dog, is here with me today. Longtime listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. She's got the hot takes on this podcast. Me, I've got the cool takes. She is spicy nacho, and I'm cool ranch. In this day and age when all podcasts, all sports coverage is just hot take sensationalism, just clickbait, I try to be a little reactionary, but I try to be reasonable. We elected to be sports fans to bring us joy in this world, and there's so many crazy things going on. I try to save my anger and my furor for those things that need my anger. So let's talk about some Houston Astros today. We're going to talk about Pitchgate, or Cross-Up-Gate. We're going to talk about Framber Valdez and Cesar Salazar, mi primo, not really, no relation. Shout out Tiny Toons fans. We're going to get to that today. Everybody is frothing out the mouth to cover this. I could have got a podcast out yesterday. I felt I could spend a day listening. Oh my gosh, we'll get to that. It's the return of Paul's Picks. That's right, you've heard of Jimmy the Greek. Well, now it's time for Paulie The Geek. Folks, I started last season picking every single game in the NFL season as to who would win, at least the regular season, I believe. I don't think I did the playoffs, man. I'll look back. I don't remember. So we are back doing Paul's Picks. This is just a straight up pick 'em. I do mention the spread. I will mention over-unders. This is a time to remind you that I am a comedian. This is comedy. This is entertainment, folks. So if you are gambling, gamble responsibly. We will talk about my Pick'em League. We will talk about my Fantasy League. We will get to some Astro stuff, all on today's podcast. It is going to be a big one, folks. But before we completely get to it, I want to wish a good day, mates, to all of my Australian listeners and all of the H-Town hustlers out there. Let's get to it, folks. We're going to go ahead and start off with Paul's picks today, and then we will get to Astros news at the back. I know we are primarily an Astros podcast, but we're going to start off with the good stuff. Today's meat, today's A block is Paul's pick. Well, Paul's picks. I'm already messing up. It's been some time. I'm a little rusty, folks. You're gonna have to forgive me as I remember how to do Paul's picks. So let's get to it. We have our week 1 Paul's picks in, and it starts off with tonight's game. If you're listening today, it is Thursday. Tonight's game, some Thursday night football coming at you, being delivered to your doorstep. We have the Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles in this game at the Eagles. The Eagles are favored, of course. No offense to Cowboys fans, but also full offense. We say we try to be reasonable on this podcast, but you're always, look, sports, you have some room for being a little bit of a hater, for some roasts. We're no different. While we try to remain positive, we gotta roast the Cowboys. We have to. So no offense / full offense to the Cowboys. Of course, the Eagles are favored in this game, 8.5. Sadly, the biggest news the Dallas Cowboys had this offseason was trading away Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers. They're that America's Team documentary is out on Netflix. Carla and I tried to watch a little bit of it. It's hard to watch. It's very good. It's a very good, well-made documentary series. Like, don't get me wrong. It's just hard to watch that much Cowboys, have that much Cowboys in my house. That's tough. I get enough of it in my King of the Hill reboot. We don't need more Cowboys talk in this house. So obviously, it goes without saying that this Houstonian is picking the Eagles. That's an easy pick. We're going with Philadelphia. Honestly, I feel like this is too easy of a first pick. So let's get to a little bit of a harder one. Let's talk about your Houston Texans playing the Los Angeles Rams. The Texans are out here in La La Land with me, with Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, dancing it up. We're all having fun out here. But the Texans dance more like Dio Choco than Ryan Gosling. But that's different. We'll get to that later. I'm very excited about this Houston Texans season. Last season, you could hear the excitement in my voice. You could hear, I was very enthusiastic about the season. This, I'm saying I'm excited while sighing. I think that goes to show that this team is no longer a team playing with found money. We now have higher expectations for this Houston Texans team, and we're a little concerned about the offensive line as a fan base. I could see how this offensive line works, but also, when you're trying something new, when you're doing something completely different than what you were doing last season, I understand why people are wringing their hands. It's not like these names are household names. But also, I would argue, I should say, that most offensive linemen in the NFL are not household names anyway. It's not like everybody you talk to out there is an offensive line scout, and everybody knows, how good these guys are. These guys are professionals. I feel confident that if the team has the confidence to move away from Laramie Tunsil and to completely rebuild their line, that they feel confident in this talent, or else they would still be bringing in more and more talent. So we'll see, but I'm feeling confident about this Houston Texans team. I'm excited about them, but I am also a little cautious because we expect them to be very good, and there's no longer like, oh, they're the young Texans, they're a year early. No, this is the year they're supposed to be good, so the expectations are a little bit higher, and in Texas, people get really angry about their football. There's a lot of emotion about football in Houston right now. The LA Rams are favored in this game, -3 at home. The over-under is 43.5. And once again, if you know your Houston fan here, your Houston fan podcaster here, Paul Salazar Jr., Space Cadet himself. If he's picking against the Cowboys, you know your boy's picking the Texans. I have to. I feel like the Texans could go out there and punch the Rams in the mouth. They're going to have to obviously have a great defensive game, which they are capable of with that defense. I feel like can put the clamps down on the LA Rams. But I am feeling optimistic about this offense. I don't think anybody is going to say that the running game is completely solved after week 1. I think I'm hoping that they will show some improvement. You know, Dare Ngumbawale was named a team captain. You love to see stuff like that. He's a great player. I love hearing his interviews on Texans All Access. You know, but we're not sure exactly how that running back platoon is exactly going to work out. But I feel like this could be a game where they reach, like 80 to 110 yards as a group, and they just keep the ball moving, and the passing game really picks up the team and gets us over the edge with a win. At least that's how I'm scripting it out. You know, I'm a writer, so of course I'm going to write out my dream version of how this game will go. Folks, I really am excited about the Houston Texans this season. Even though I'm sighing, I'm nervous. I want them to do good. And there's so many things, that can go wrong in football. Can go wrong in any sport. We've dealt with lots of injuries on all sorts of teams before. All the injuries to the wide receivers last season, all the injuries to the Houston Astros this season. To get too excited early on in the preseason is folly. It is folly. I'm getting ecclesiastical on you. I am excited, but because of the expectations, because we expect them to win like 11 games this season, you're just a little more cautious, and you want to see how that running back room works. You want to see how that offensive line is able to protect C.J. Stroud, as well as get that push for those running backs. And until those questions are really answered, we're really still going to be cautious here at the podcast. But we're still picking the Texans for the win, baby. With that being said, I know we only got 2 picks in. That's how it goes sometimes. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and finish up Paul's picks. We'll be right back, folks.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
And we're back. Welcome back to Space Cadet Sports, or the Space Cadet Sports podcast, I should say. Either way, you could be colloquial and just call us Space Cadet Sports. I don't care. You could call us SPSC. I'm your host, Paul Salazar Jr. For all of you weirdos that listen to the podcast just straight up in the middle, you old vinyl record, you old vinyl listening stoners just listening to the podcast in the middle, welcome. We're talking about Paul's picks here. We are getting to our NFL picks. Moving on to just the third game in the picks here. Kansas City versus the LA Chargers. The Kansas City Chiefs are favored by 3 points in this game. The over-under is 46.5. Why worry too much? The Chiefs are still the Chiefs. The Chargers can kind of have been this kind of middling football team for quite some time. I think you just have to pick the Chiefs and move on. I think we'll see a little bit more out of where each of these teams is trending after this game, but I'm feeling pretty solid about Kansas City. Am I feeling solid enough to make it Paul's pick of the week? I don't think so. We're going to have to wait and see. Don't forget, folks, every week, when I'm making my picks, I make Paul's pick of the week, which is a pick I feel the most strongly about. The most strongly. Look, folks, I was a creative writing minor, I should say. I wasn't a communications minor. I was a creative writing minor, okay? I should have studied communications, I guess is what I'm saying. We're going to move on to the next game here. Tampa Bay versus Atlanta. Tampa Bay is favored by 1.5 points while visiting Atlanta on the road. The over-under is 47.5, and I'm picking the home dogs here. I really feel like I really feel like this is, kind of the same kind of thing where we want to see where both of these teams are trending. We're really unsure. They can kind of be middling sometimes. Tampa Bay has had a lot more success as of late. But I'm not feeling them. And look, this is where I say I'm a comedian, right? This is where I haven't followed Tampa Bay so closely or Atlanta so closely where I could explain, well, you got to look at their receiving versus cornerback matchups or anything like that. No, I'm just saying I feel better about Atlanta. I'm taking that. But we'll see if my gut leads me astray. Usually the way it goes, as the season goes on, I get more information, I start paying more attention, and I start to worry about my picks more. Right now, at the beginning of the season, I can go with my gut a lot more. By the end of this football season, you'll see how much I trust my gut, folks. Let's move on. Is that going to be Carla's dog of the week? We'll have to see. Every year, Carla, every year. Goodness, I'm having a good one today. Every week, Carla will also pick a dog of the week, picking the underdog that we feel the best about. The next game here, we have Cincinnati versus Cleveland. That's why I'm stalling. Good Lord. We don't want to watch this game, let alone talk about it. Cincinnati is favored by 5.5 points. The over-under is 47.5 on this game. You got to pick Cincy here. I mean, I don't know. Cleveland... It's just I'm not trying to be like they're not gonna win a game this season, but we're gonna have to see how the matchups go. It's just not a team that is inspiring a lot of faith in many people. Definitely not the odds makers, nor us here at Space Cadet Sports. Carla is snoring. I mentioned the Ohio football teams, professional football teams. Carla, these are professionals. I mentioned their boring game, and she fell asleep. Moving on to Miami versus Indianapolis. Indianapolis is favored at home by 1 point, which is, at that point, that's just disgraceful. That's kind of a slap in the face with a white glove. The over-under in this is 46.5. I'm picking Miami. I don't feel good about Indianapolis. I know people don't feel good about Miami either. I know Miami's not, getting a lot of people excited about them. People are saying it could be a disaster just waiting to completely unfold in front of our very eyes, and they may be right. But I'm betting that the Colts are just not quite there, and the Colts are going to struggle. I'm picking Miami to win this game in a slight underdog, road dog matchup here for the Dolphins. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders versus the New England Patriots. The Patriots are actually favored here by 2.5. That's the woeful Raiders. You think that maybe they'll be able to bounce back one year. The Patriots are already bouncing back quicker than them. The over-under in this game is 43.5. I'm picking New England and not overthinking it. Sorry, Raiders Nation. Sorry to the Raiders fans. I know. We'll see how the season goes for you. Arizona versus New Orleans. In New Orleans, Arizona is favored by 6.5 points. The over-under is 43. Not a lot of people. A lot of people. We're making fun of some of these teams that we're unsure of. We're making fun of some of these teams that we know are going to be bad. New Orleans is a team that pretty much everybody. The consensus is they suck. Sorry, Greg Hundemer. Sorry, my New Orleans Saint fans. Fan friends, it's not fun when going into the season that your team is just going to completely suck. Arizona is given 6.5 points to you at home. We're picking Arizona and just praying for the Saints. Moving on to Pittsburgh Steelers versus the New York Jets. The Steelers are favored in this game by 3 points. The over-under, I think this is going to be the lowest over-under of the week. I believe it's 38.5 in this game, if I can read my own handwriting correctly there. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of defense, and you're going to pick the Pittsburgh Steelers to win a defensive game every single time. We're going with Pittsburgh here. The New York Giants versus the Washington Commanders. At the Commanders, the over-under is 45.5. The Washington Commanders are favored by 6 points in this one, and I have to agree. I feel very solidly about this one. The Washington Commanders beat the New York Giants. Moving on to another woeful team, you have the Carolina Panthers going to Denver to play the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are favored by 8.5 with an over-under of 42.5. Yeah, the Broncos, there is hope in Carolina. I could see light at the end of the tunnel, maybe for a franchise like Carolina at this stage. However, they're going to have to prove it. They're going to have to play some good football. They're going to have to coach themselves up and make the right personnel moves. It isn't happening in week one. Probably is not going to happen against Josh McDaniels in Denver. We're picking Denver as well. The next game is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks, where the 49ers are favored on the road by 2.5 points. The over-under is 43.5. And I don't know if I'm just not buying the 49ers heading in the right direction, or am I selling the 49ers completely, or am I buying the Seahawks headed the right way? I'm not really sure, but my gut's getting in the way. It's grumbling, it's making noises. Maybe it's all those chocolate donuts I ate for breakfast. I'm not sure, but my gut's talking to me and telling me to pick Seattle as the underdog here, so we're going with Seattle here. I felt good about it when I was writing it down, but now I'm unsure. But still, I feel Seattle's the pick that I'm going to lean with. I'm going with that. That's what I'm putting into my sleeper app. Folks, I'm playing once again the Huckle Pick'em League. Shout out to the Huckle Pick'ems. Shout out to the Huckle Pickers. I'm very excited, of course. I love playing fantasy with my friends. Should be another good year. I'll let you know how I do. I did fairly well last season. I think I ended up in the top 5 of all my friends, of my 5 friends who played. No, I have to go back. It's a pretty decent group. I did fairly well. I mean, it's all on the podcast. I'll go back, but you can go back and check it too. Why don't you do the work? Moving on to Detroit versus Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers are favored at home by 2.5 points against the Detroit Lions. And once again, I'm going with my gut. I feel like the Detroit Lions could take this team. I mean, it would be a tough team on the road, but I feel like with the Detroit Lions head coach, that type of a motivator, he's going to get them ready for week one. I could see that kind of being a pop them in the mouth type of game. I'm rolling with the Lions. My fiance, her family's from Michigan. Maybe that kind of hearing about the Detroit Lions for so long, maybe that's why I'm feeling good about them. I don't know. We'll have to see. The next game is going to be Baltimore versus Buffalo. Baltimore is favored on the road by 1 point. The over-under in this one is 50.5. It should be a good scoring affair. I agree. Obviously, could be a close one. And obviously with the -1, Vegas is looking for it to be close. So this is going to be probably the game of the week. 2 high-profile teams, high-scoring affair, something that should be fairly close. This is going to be the one everyone's talking about. But in the end, I'm going with Baltimore. I feel like you just have to pick the team that you feel better about. For me, that's going to be Baltimore. The last game here of the week is going to be Minnesota versus Chicago on Monday Night Football. Minnesota is favored by 1.5 points at Chicago. The over-under is 44. Chicago could be kind of like Carolina here, where I'm saying they could be trending upward. They could be getting to a point where there might be light at the end of the tunnel for them. But Minnesota has just been overcoached. This team last season really surprised me. Really was a fantastic team and played outside of their minds as a group. The culture there is fantastic. I'm just picking Minnesota for sure. All right, so let's look at it. The Paul's pick of the week. Who wins the honor of being Paul's pick of the week, guys? We have to go with the Denver Broncos against the Carolina Panthers. I feel much more strongly about that than the Cowboys at Eagles. The Cowboys could win just to spite me. There's people that are talking about, are the Cowboys, contenders this season? I think they might be a little delulu, but at the end of the day, you go with the team that you think has the greater distance between their talents, I'm going to have to go with the Denver Broncos and the winning against the Carolina Panthers. And Carla's dog of the week, Carla, has to make it the Houston Texans, because that's who we feel the most strongly about in this house. She's nodding her little bear head. Yeah, she kind of looks like a bear. We joke, we call her Bear. I'm sure I've said that in the podcast before. We call her Bear. But she's nodding her bear head. She agrees. Carla's pick of the week is the Houston Texans. Lock it in. Save the receipts. Let's go. Folks, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk some Houston Astros.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
And we're back, otra vez. It's me, your host, Paul Salazar Jr. Welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast again. Let's get to Crossgate 2025. You know, we try not to be reactionary. We try to tell y'all to calmate during hot take news cycles, but I don't think I could break this one. People are so upset. This news is everywhere. Nobody can stop talking about it. Every podcast has an opinion. I can't believe y'all are letting John Boy get you in your feelings so much. Those hacks. So instead of fighting them, you know, we're just going to join them. There are bigger things in life to fight, right? We're leaning into Cross-Up-Gate 2025. Framber Valdez versus Cesar Salazar. So, it was bad. Yeah, you know, like, it's definitely not good. You know, on this podcast in the past, we definitely have defended Framber Valdez by saying, you know, look, like, people get very upset about his body language. People get very upset by him. But for me, I read that as a very passionate player, right? As somebody who really cares about the game. People say that he is a head case. You know, to me, that says that that's just somebody who, once again, really, really cares about his performance. He can get worked up in those moments, and he needs to take a breath from those moments, find some calm, and do what he does best. When he's overthrowing, when he's trying too hard, is when Framber is not the Framber that we need. When he is overpassionate, that's when he's the Framber that we don't need. You know, when there's too many men on base. You know, he's had these moments throughout his career with Houston, but he has also had amazing moments of consistent success, quality start streaks, just win streaks. The guy is a great pitcher, and when it's going really good, there's no problems. But when there are some issues, there's obviously some problems that Framber starts to have. And before this whole cross-up gate, that's kind of been my take on Framber. Is like, you kind of got to give him a little bit of grace. I think it's just difficult. You know, you hear things about pitchers being competitive. You know, pitchers like Justin Verlander not talking to people on game day, like really kind of intense things, and that kind of stuff is allowed by some pitchers. You know, some kind of antics and stuff, and some kind of competitiveness, some kind of things that maybe wouldn't be considered all too nice. You know, kind of stomping around on the mound, barking at people. You know, it doesn't, I'm not saying across the board pitchers should be allowed to do anything. I'm just saying some of that behavior is allowed. But with Framber, for whatever reason, as a fan base, we just have not allowed it. We just weren't about it. And I think fans at times were just too aggressive with Framber. And I do think, especially after Cross-Up Gate, you know, he might not be an Astro next season. And he's the exact type of player that if he wasn't on our team, fans would be like, why can't we get somebody like Framber? So that's kind of been my whole take with Framber. Is like, people are unnecessarily ready to jump on the beat up Framber bandwagon constantly. But if he wasn't on our team, y'all would desperately want somebody like him. I mean, this team, at some point, this fan base on Reddit was trying to talk other people into Trevor Bauer. So, you know, don't talk to me about players that have complete idiotic moments on the mound that you guys are ready to excuse. It's like you're ready to excuse Trevor Bauer's moments, but you're ready to bury Framber Valdez. That doesn't make much sense to me. You know, I think the narratives have to do a lot with skin color sometimes as to what certain players can get away with. But in this instance, that isn't the case. Framber Valdez, for those of you who didn't see it, I'm talking about this as I'm just talking generally because I just assume everybody has seen it, everybody's talked about it, everybody's heard about it. But for those of you who didn't see it, Framber Valdez basically just nailed Cesar Salazar, and there really is no other way around it that it just seemed very intentional, and just cover your ears, earmuffs. It's just shitty behavior. I think if you go back and you watch, we watch all the games here at this household. In this house, we watch every single Astros game. But no, we were watching, Framber Valdez was not wanting to go to a curve. He wanted to stick with a sinker in a bases-loaded situation. He was kind of shaking off Salazar. He wasn't, the communication there has broken down a little bit at that point in the game. Framber Valdez is somebody that gets uber focused. When he worked with a sports psychologist, they tried to help him work on that focus. He can be a little too zeroed in at times. It seemed like he was a little too laser focused. Was not listening to Cesar Salazar. Cesar Salazar was having trouble communicating with Framber Valdez, and he tried to wave Framber off as Framber is mid windup, though. And that doesn't excuse any behavior. I'm just saying that this was a breakdown of communication. You want something to happen to communicate before that moment. Framber throws a sinker, like just a meatball over the middle of the plate. It becomes a grand slam. Framber's frustrated. Cesar Salazar's frustrated. Everybody in Houston is frustrated at that moment. Next batter, next pitch. Cesar Salazar calls for a pitch. Apparently it was a curveball. And Framber Valdez throws a sinker over the middle of the plate. Cesar Salazar is expecting a bigger break. The pitch just kind of drills him in the chest pad. Framber Valdez immediately turns away from the mound and stomps off towards the top of the mound in the rosin bag, and Cesar Salazar just kind of gets up quickly, takes his mask off, stares down the back of Framber Valdez's jersey, kind of takes a breath and just throws the ball back. After the game, nothing happens on the field. Obviously, folks, look, people are like, there should be some retaliation. There should be something said. It's like, you don't want your team to have a fight against itself in a game. That would be nuts. I'm glad that everybody was reasonable during this game and everybody just tried to brush it off and move on. The time you have a conversation with Framber is behind closed doors. You don't have it on the field. Him throwing a hissy fit on the field doesn't mean you get to throw a hissy fit on the field. Plus, who wins there? The Yankees win when something like that happens. So I'm happy it was dealt with behind closed doors. But after the game, basically, Framber Valdez said that they were crossed up, it wasn't intentional, and that they called for, Cesar Salazar called for a sinker, or called for a curveball, but Framber had a sinker already in his head, and that's what he threw, which obviously, like I said, is not good behavior, is being way too focused, and is endangering your catcher. And Cesar Salazar basically played it off by saying he hit the wrong button and everything is fine. Both men seem to be very cool and collected. I think this is going to be a thing that Joe Espada and the Astros have to deal with. Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, some of the leaders on the team are going to have to step up and help with this situation behind closed doors. A lot's being made out of this, a lot's being said out of this. Obviously, this type of behavior should not be happening. I think you can, when I'm sitting here saying that Framber Valdez gets some unfair treatment, I think that's true. But also, Framber Valdez behaved very abhorrently and should definitely, be ashamed of himself a little bit. That can be true too. I think this has just gotten to a point where it's a little untenable, perhaps, if this is how he's behaving on the field. And I honestly didn't think it was that bad. Like, I thought that him complaining about the positioning of players, there was a little bit of some, yellow flags, if you will, but to do what he did is just a huge red flag. And, I think, and when I say it's untenable, I do think that there's a way for them to mend this relationship and for Fromber to finish off this season with a lot of positivity with the Houston Astros. And that's what we have to focus on, right? We have to focus on this guy needing to kind of have a moment where he apologizes to the team, needing to see his errors, and needing to join back on the team to help them win games. You don't do that by alienating people. You don't do that by getting in somebody's chest and making them feel small for their actions. He might be at a point where he needs some tough love, but tough love isn't always the answer. So I'm glad that they're figuring out a way to do this behind closed doors. I don't think a lot of athletes would respond to people taking to the media to address those issues. Look at Rafael Devers. Look at every other drama that has happened on a team. You want things to happen behind closed doors. So I'm thinking what's happening is they're trying to get Fromber and Cesar Salazar back on the same page. It wouldn't shock me even if the next game Fromber starts, Cesar Salazar is out there. Because the reason why is because I think Cesar Salazar is a bigger guy here. Mi primo. But really no relation. I think he took the high road here. He is carrying the water for the team. He's not making a big deal about this. The next game, he brought out the lineup card for the team. I think the team is trying to be like, look, Sally, we have your back, man. We're gonna fix this and we're gonna make this right. And the player that can make it right is Framber Valdez. And after the press conference, that could have been a worse press conference than it was. It could have been more denial. It could have been lashing out. I think he just was trying to keep it chill and trying to move on to the next day. And I think Framber Valdez will be a big man and try to repair this relationship. Obviously, if he doesn't, the rest of the league is going to be watching that. This man is in a contract year. I think a lot of people in his camp are telling him, hey, you got to do the right thing here. I know this is frustrating, but you got to step up and do the right thing. And I have faith that he'll do that. And I have faith in this organization being strong enough to withstand a very minuscule scandal like this. I was joking that we're going to lean into it. All I mean is we're going to talk about it for a long time. But I really think that they can overcome this scandal. I think that both of these guys can be bigger, and I think that this team, dealing with it behind closed doors, will make it right. Now, will this ever truly be like a situation where these guys really trust each other again? That's on Cesar Salazar, and I'd get it if he really, kind of forgives but doesn't forget in a way. That's getting a mid-90s fastball being thrown at you and yikes. That's really unsafe. It's just crazy. It's crazy that it happened, and I think this team is just going to have to deal with it behind closed doors, and I think Fromberg's going to have to bounce back, and the team needs him, and after this season, though, will the team want to re-sign him? Probably not after a situation like this. But my argument also would be there's a lot of teams out there that might not want to sign a guy that did that either. So he might be hurting his overall value for next season. So it's in his best interest, not only as a good person, but as a businessman, to hopefully bury this story and make amends. So we'll see what happens. For what a terrible situation it is, I am optimistic that they can figure it out. But my goodness, it was so tough to watch, and Framber Valdez will live with that moment for the rest of his life. That will be a moment that will always be pointed at from now on. So like the defense of me saying, he's just gets passionate sometimes. From now on, you're gonna point to that and be like, no, He also can do that. And that's valid. It changes the way I look at Fromber too, because it's like, okay, that's very much a step too far. With that being said, I got some more sad news for y'all. Spencer Arrighetti is out with elbow inflammation. And with just a couple of weeks left in the season, and with the way elbow inflammation goes, you think he might be done for the season, which is tough. The rotation's kind of getting back into form. We're hoping the Astros can stop limping towards the end of the season and get some wins, string some wins together to win the AL West and start their momentum for a playoff run. And this feels like it severely hurts it. We're leaning on Christian Javier and Luis Garcia more than ever now to get right as they're rehabbing from surgery. And that also means we're leaning on Framber Valdez, who we've leaned on for years, for seasons at this point, to be an ace of our staff. And now, that's questionable because of his on-field behavior. So I'm hoping that they can bounce back from that. The Astros beat a close one against the Yankees yesterday and played the rubber match today. Yesterday, I believe that was a 7-8 Astros win. That one, Brian Abreu had some struggles in the ninth. We're hoping, it was a 8-7 there. We're hoping that the bullpen can continue to hold it down. In today's game, Christian Javier is going up there against the Yankees, who matches up well against a, slugging, true three outcome team like the Yankees. We're hoping that he goes out there and wins this one for the Astros, winning this series, making the Yankees cry yet again, and getting ready to play against the the South Oklahoma Rangers, as that's our next series, folks. We're really cheering on the Astros. They got yesterday's win to kind of silence the news story of Cross-Up Gate. We're hoping that this series win against the Yankees will kind of silence that even more. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, bop it, kick it, skip it, smash all of those buttons for me. We are a small podcast and only go as far as our listenership takes us. We are supported by listeners like you. Dun, 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 dun. So please share with a Houston fan or Australian in your life and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. Check out the Substack at spacecadetsports.substack.com where you can be a listener, where you can be a subscriber. Subscribe to the blog, subscribe to the podcast there for free. If you would like to be a premium subscriber, that's just a way to help the podcast, help us pay the bills, keep the lights on around here. You could be a free subscriber and get almost every podcast, article, and meme dump. Becoming a premium subscriber gets you behind the paywall, and what's behind that paywall, you can help me decide and describe to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say, as we're building our community. Thanks for the support. You could also support by checking out our merch, Cam Smith aircraft carrier hats, Don't Sleep on Houston basketball hats, Carla the dog in H-Town blue. You can find all of the merch on our website. That's paulsalazarjr.net, because I'm nothing but net. You could also let us know on social media what you think of Cross-Up Gate, what you think of the Houston Texans' first game against the LA Rams at Space Cadet Sports, at spacecadetsports.bsky.social, or leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/spacecadetsports. And if you've gotten this far, you appreciate all my weirdness and all my goofiness, you can find me specifically online at Paul Salazar JR, making weird jokes, memes, art, podcasts, and so much more. Once again, paulsalazarjr.net, because I'm nothing but net, where you can find my other Substack and all my other nonsense, if you're nasty. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos, vamos, Houston.